Hi, I'm Michelle, and welcome to the Grateful Podcast, a place where we contemplate how we can eat, live, and lead each day to build a more sustainable world. This week is the second episode of our little series on Can Mushrooms Save the World? Last episode, you joined me in Zimbabwe with the amazing Cito Guevara, who's the founder of the Future of Hope Foundation. And this week, I'm taking you, first of all, to Lisbon, Portugal, where we're going to meet Natan, who's the founder of a startup called NAM that collects coffee grounds from all across the city of Lisbon and uses them to produce mushrooms and also fertilizer. And when I spoke to Cito and Natan and several of the other people I reached out to who were mushroom enthusiasts, they all talked about one person. And that person is Ivanka from Serbia. She is the founder of a very cool school which teaches people how to grow mushrooms on waste products as a part of a circular economy. And it turns out many of the people doing very cool things with mushrooms around the world have actually been trained by her. So after I take you to Lisbon, we're heading to Serbia, just outside of Belgrade, where we're going to have a chat with Ivanka and learn more from her over 30 years of experience of working with mushrooms and hear her perspective on whether or not they can change the world. Could we just start by you letting the listeners know what NAM is and what you do?
So NAM actually means mushrooms in Vietnamese. But what NAM is, it's a circular economy project and a mushroom urban farm that upcycles coffee waste into mushrooms, fresh mushrooms, and also fertilizer. So the idea here is that actually really few people know it, but when you make a cup of coffee, you only use around 1% of the total biomass that is available into your coffee. All the rest is considered waste. So first of all, that's a huge amount of waste. That's also a huge inefficiency of our food system. But most importantly, it's actually not waste because it makes a really good resource to grow mushrooms. Not only because you have a lot of waste, but also because when you make a cup of coffee, you pour hot water through your coffee. And so that means that the coffee or your waste, the coffee waste, is totally clean, which is just fantastic. You have waste that is not waste. And secondly, it's totally clean. So the idea is to take advantage of that, collect the coffee waste at local restaurants and cafes here in Lisbon, bring it back to a local urban farm inside of the city. Because if you have all your primary material, it makes sense to be close to that primary material. Mix it with mushroom seeds and a bit of straw. And 6 weeks later, you get mushrooms that we then harvest and sell back to most of the time, actually, the same cafes and restaurants where we collected the coffee waste in the first place. And then finally, the really cool thing about this whole process is that by growing mushrooms, inside of your coffee waste, you enrich the coffee waste with nutrients. So the leftover, all the substrate that doesn't transform into mushroom becomes a fertilizer that you can then distribute to local farms. And that's how you go from a waste to food and to fertilizer, and you create 2 times value locally. Everything locally using only what is locally available.
It's such a beautiful example of circular economy in practice.
Yeah.
Very nice. So how did you stumble onto mushrooms?
That's actually linked to what you, Ivanka and Günther Polly. I don't know if you heard about Günther Polly. Yeah, from the Blue Economy. He's a guy that is on a mission actually to do exactly that, to find business models that are able to reconcile economy and ecology. And that's where the idea of using coffee waste to produce mushrooms and fertilizer comes from. And I worked with this guy for around 6 months, where I actually learned different business models. And one of them was about growing mushrooms out of coffee waste. And at the time when I finished my internship and I also finished my master's degree, I didn't have a lot of money. I still don't. But I wanted to start my own thing. And so I thought trying to find a small place inside of the city center of Lisbon and trying to grow my own mushrooms.
And in your experience so far, is this a viable business model?
In my experience so far, I was doing that on a really small scale. Mm-hmm. I think the secret most of the time is, at least in the food system, from what I understood, with the current way food production and food consumption works, it's most of the time a question of scale. Mm. And so at my scale, it wasn't sustainable when I was doing it on my own. I was only recovering around 500 kilos of coffee waste per month and producing around 100 kilos of mushrooms per month. And I was selling it for 7-8 euros per kilo. So I was not sustainable on my own. But now we are looking on a much bigger scale. And the whole idea is actually to find the right mix between using what is locally available and selling to the local market at the right scale. So that means that here we're looking at the market of Lisbon and we want to understand what is the right scale in terms of mushroom consumption. We're going to move so that in terms of mushroom consumption. And so here we are probably looking at around a ton of mushroom per month that we're going to produce out of 5 tons of coffee waste. So that, I hope, and according to the business plan, but sometimes reality is different, it should be sustainable. I'm sorry, I have a truck pass.
No problem. Maybe we should tell everybody that you're standing in a construction site right now. Do you want to talk to us a bit about what's actually happening around you?
Yeah, so that is actually what we're doing. So I said that I increased the sale of the production, and that's what we're doing, is that we are building a new pharmacy inside of the city center of Lisbon, where we're going to stay with exactly the same concept, but at a bigger scale. And so the idea was to try to find a space where we could put containers, shipping containers, that we would then transform into growing rooms for mushrooms. And that's what we're doing right now. And so that's why there is a bit of noise and people around.
Great. And so when that's completely finished, describe to us what it's going to be like to walk into one of these shipping containers filled with mushrooms.
It's going to be like, what do people compare it from time to time? You know, the guys that are doing drugs inside of their caravan.
Oh, Breaking Bad.
Breaking Bad. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, now I'm intrigued.
No, I'm joking. It's just that it's going to be a container. So we actually took the containers. For those that know, you have 2 types of containers. You have the normal containers, and then you have the refrigerated containers, which are the containers that are covered and insulated, and that basically most of the time transport meat. So that inside it's full of stainless steel, and then you're gonna have racks where you're gonna have bags hanging and mushrooms growing. It's gonna be really humid, a bit of light, and sort of windy / fresh, because the mushrooms, they need, what we're going to do in this production, in the production process, is that we're always going to try to imitate the conditions of nature. And so you have basically 2 stages. You have the incubation, which is when the mushroom is under the bark of the tree. And that's when you don't have fresh air. You have a really high level of CO2. You don't have light, and the temperature is always constant. And that's what it looks like in the first stage. So the first stage, actually, if you're walking inside of the container, you don't see anything because it's pitch black. And then after that, we want to imitate the conditions of spring. So when it's springtime, you have a bit of light, you have a lot of fresh air, and you have a lot of humidity. And that's exactly what it looks like on stage 2. And that's where it's actually interesting, because then we make little holes inside of the bags and the mushrooms start to grow from the bags.
Very cool.
So that's what, yeah.
Yeah, I think I saw a video of you in one of these rooms, and it was very eerie, kind of a lot of fog and
Exactly, that's what it looks like. It's really foggy, but it's a really cool environment to work, and it's really beautiful to see that. I love the idea that the mushrooms, they are the degrader or the recyclers of nature, so they can basically take any type of matter. Any type of organic matter that dies in nature is then recovered and given back to the soil by the mushroom. So the mushroom is, for example, going to degrade the tree, and then the mushroom by itself is going to die, and it's going to transform into a substrate for the soil, and that's the cycle of life. And that's exactly the role of mushrooms in nature, is that they degrade anything that dies to give it back to the soil, the cycle of life.
Very nice. And that's leading some people to claim that mushrooms can save the world. What are your thoughts on that?
Mushrooms, I don't know if they are part of the solution. I like to believe that solutions are going to come from many different islands, but mushroom is definitely an island, and there are some interesting things. And I think the great thing with mushroom is that you can start really easily, like I did, and like Ivanka, and like in Africa they also do. You can just basically recover any type of waste that is cellulosic, that has organic matter of it. So it can be straw, it can be sawdust, it can be spent beer, it can be coffee waste, it can be anything you can find locally, and then use that as a substrate. And the great thing is that not only are you fighting waste, but you also have your substrate for free. So that also changed completely the mindset of how you see waste, actually. And that's why I think mushrooms are really great, because you can start really simply. You don't need a lot of money, you don't need a lot of knowledge, you just need to experiment and learn by yourself. I'm not saying it's easy, but that's the great thing about mushrooms, is that you can enter the world of mushrooms really easily. So yeah, it's part of the solution.
Fantastic. And so all this work with mushrooms and looking at circular economy, how has that changed how you eat or shop or cook or engage with food?
That for me changed a lot, actually, because then once you actually start producing food and getting into contact with people that are passionate by food, it can be cooks, it can be producers, it can be supermarkets, sometimes also just passionate about food. You learn the value of food, how much water it takes to produce a potato, how much water it takes to produce a tomato, how much work it's, the whole process that is behind, all the people behind. So that's really the way producing something really changed my relationship with food, because I value a lot more what is behind the product. And then also, more than anything, more than being organic, more than being nice looking or everything, for me, what's really important nowadays is eating local, because that is really helping the local economy, helping people that, yeah, just basically live next door, that are doing some cool stuff and that love what they do.
I'm interested in hearing a bit more about your personal journey. What have been the biggest learnings for you as you start a new organization and have to lead yourself and others through all sorts of processes, from fundraising to growing mushrooms to communication?
That's a good question. Something I noticed actually quite recently is that at the beginning of your process of your project, you have a lot of time to think about your values, to think about the philosophy you want to implement, to think about all of that stuff. But once you get into the real action, you don't have time for that anymore, because then it really becomes micromanagement of cash flow, micromanagement of people, micromanagement of everything, daily stuff that you need to do. And at the end of the day, you get back home and you're really tired, and you don't have time anymore to dream, to think about all the value and the why you started this project. So I think that's really something I realized, is that at the beginning, you really need to know why you're doing something, and to build that whole philosophy, that whole mindset that you want to implement. Because once you're in it, it's really difficult to take the time to do it. So that is something I realized quite recently, and that's, I think, it's an important learning. Also very important, once you get into the action, you need to be patient with the results. So you need to be sort of impatient with the action, taking action as soon as you can and trying stuff, even if it's really little, even if it's to have a really little impact, it's better than anything. But then you need to be patient with the results. And that sometimes, as an entrepreneur or as a person, it's difficult, because you're expecting everything to happen and you dream about a perfect state of things. But that's not how it happens, or at least it takes a lot of time. And that's what people don't see about success or about failure, is that either a failure or a success, it takes time to get there. And so And so, yeah, patience is actually also a really important things you need to have. I learned.
And this path is inevitably littered with different types of failures. So what's been the failure you've learnt the most from?
That's a really good question. I never thought about it. Obviously, one of the biggest failure I've had is when I started my project, I couldn't grow mushrooms. I wouldn't grow. And I think that can happen to any grower or to any person that develops something. Is that at the beginning you think it would work, but then it doesn't work. And that's something you learn from, is also to be persistent and to keep going even though you don't get there, because eventually you get there. So that's a failure. And then another one, if I have, maybe it would be to sometimes you believe that the people with whom you're gonna work or with whom you work are what they say they are, but then you discover they are eventually not. And that's also really something important, is that you always need to make sure that you can continue without them, or that you're not too much dependent on them. I would say that was an important learning.
So what I really love about what you're doing, Nathan, is that you're not focusing on fighting the old, but you're building something new. So what type of skills do you think are important for anybody that wants to follow a path like that?
I love that citation, that quotation about the secret of change is to focus all your energy on building the new and not on fighting the old. And for that, I think the first skill that you need to have, you need to sort of have, it doesn't have to be something really big, because when we say vision, from time to time, people think that it's really something big, but you need to have a place where you would ideally get and be. And then you need to have that vision or that ability to imagine yourself then there, and to imagine how you would get there, what you would do. So I think really having that dream or that vision is a really important part. Then something that I just mentioned and that I learned, you need to have a lot of patience, because you don't change. Even if you focus all your energy on building something new, you don't change the old from one day to the other. And even building something takes a lot of time. So a lot of patience. And also, I think what is really, really important is the ability to take action. So just do, not thinking too much, not starting to analyze markets, just do and then go with the flow, and eventually you get there. Because if you do stuff, things happen, and if things happen in some way or another, it will always be positive.
Inspirational words for anybody sitting on the idea to start something, but getting ready to get ready to get ready. The idea of just act.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
I do have one final question for you. What's your favorite way to cook mushrooms?
Simple. Olive oil and a bit of garlic. That's the way to go. At least for the Archer one, which is the one I produce and which is the one I love. I always cook it with olive oil and a bit of garlic or onions, really simple. And then eat it like this, maybe with a bit of good bread, if you have good bread from your local bakery. Then yeah.
Very nice.
Nathan wasn't the only mushroom enthusiast that I reached out to. There was one thing that most of the people I chatted to seemed to have in common. And that was a wonderful Serbian lady by the name of Ivanka Milenkovic, the founder of Ekofungi. So Ivanka sees it as her mission to empower young people to create their own agribusiness, putting circular economy principles front and center. And many years ago, she actually started her own school just outside of Belgrade in Serbia that trains people from all over the world on how to create their own mushroom growing businesses. As Ivanka's name kept coming up with everybody that I talked to, I wanted to chat with her directly and learn more about her experience as a mushroom pioneer. Ivanka, thank you so much for joining today. I'm really excited to talk to you because I'm very interested in the role that mushrooms can play in making a better food system. And everywhere I looked at this topic, I kept coming to your name. So I feel like I'm coming to the mother of mushrooms. I don't know how you feel about that title.
I will definitely consider that very positive. But of course, I am far from, at least I cannot be a mother because they are old millions years. So that will be a very tricky. That you can find my name everywhere is the fact that I'm doing a small business created with ambition to transform, to translate scientific results and approach into the daily life and daily practice. Honestly speaking, it is very difficult. It is very rare globally. And can you imagine how it is rare here in our region on Balkan, in Serbia, where economy situation and business circumstances had never been easy? We are the example how the knowledge and science can help that you survive, that you grow, that you implement the models.
I feel so many people are talking about the problems, and that's important, but you focus on talking about solutions and not just talking, actually doing, which is amazing. Yeah. And it seems like people now come from all around the world to learn and be inspired by Ekofungi. So could you tell us a little bit about why they come to you? What are they coming to learn?
I am a biologist, and I have finished my postgraduate study with the really most important scientist globally in this field, Dr. Leo van Griensven. And then I met Silvia Barberi for industrial design and systemic design on University of Turin. And there, thanks of the tutoring of Professor Gino Bastignano, we created the very first mushroom on the coffee ground, which, honestly speaking, is not big revolution because mushrooms like cellulose, and especially those group of mushrooms, where oyster, an example, belong, where they are only looking for the cellulose in order to grow and flourish. So for mushroom, it's not important where cellulose is coming from. Is it from wood or from straw or from coffee waste? So we just use that biological characteristic. And based on the coffee waste, and the project was supported by Lavazza, so that was very important to show that it is possible. We offer to the global auditorium first mushrooms on the coffee waste growing during the Slow Food Festival in Turin in October 2008. So it was revolutionary step. Honestly, like always happened accidentally, and from that time people start to have interest for me, and thanks of the Zari network and Dr. Ginter Pauli, they really wanted to start something, and slowly, little by little, we grown up, and as far as we grown more, people had been more convinced to come, because first, at our place, they are learning about the biology pillars of the mushroom cultivation. That's something what I'm insisting on. Second, they can spare in time and money, spare 30 years of my working, because I'm working 30 years. And based on that, what people's name open source, we transfer to them all our knowledge, but in the afternoon, after the sessions in the classroom, of course, we are not school, we are production, so this is in our office, they are going in the production, and with own eyes, they are seeing that exactly what I'm talking about, I am doing, and some people have a salaries out of that. So it is second reason. Third, we try to make out of that school one nice social gathering, and people enjoy. It is very relaxed. But the fact is that through that light communication, we transfer to them all relevant knowledge, which definitely save them from failures in financing, in wrong investment. And it is nice, you spread sort of the community. So that is the reason why people are coming. So science, application, honest speech, honest talk, and good relations.
I think they're the most important pillars of any education, right?
Yeah.
Taking the theory into practice and building a social network and community around it.
Yes,
that's how it carries forward.
Yes, I think so. I think so.
And it seems that circular economy and blue economy are terms that are important to your work. What do they mean for you practically in how you grow mushrooms and how you set up your business?
In the nature, mushrooms are a big communal enterprise who take care about the garbage. So mushrooms, in fact, create opportunity that nature has circularity. And in nature, circularity is normal. It is way of functioning of the nature. So if you apply mushrooms, then in fact, you are doing copy-paste of the processes from the nature. And our approach is nothing more but adjusting processes from the nature into the small industrial or big industrial processes. And what we recognize that it is going in the natural cycles, we try to apply in our business. Like result, we created a unique circular economy company, but circularity in Ekofungi had never been goal by itself. We just use opportunity with circularity in order to maintain our business. Through circularity, it is not only that you use waste from something like a raw material for other things, it is also multiplication of the cash flow. So, when not easy economic conditions and business circumstances, then you found a way for surviving. And that's how circularity in Ekofungi exists. Copy the processes from the nature and transfer those into the industrial life. And we start to talk about that already in zero emission research 20, 30 years ago. But the differences between circularity and blue economy for me is that nice atmosphere in the company, positive relations with the people, a correct approach towards employees, wondering about their happiness to create total nice atmosphere where people are coming to be happy.
Not just in theory, but actually in practice.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I noticed on your website, you have a nice saying, from waste to taste, which I like very much. So what type of waste can you actually use as a substrate or as a material to grow mushrooms on? And where do you collect it from?
Well, just to come back on your previous question, one of the most important pillar of the blue economy is that that it is producing locally for the local market. We produce organically certified champignon and organic certified oyster mushroom. For champignon, originally, already 3 centuries ago, people are using horse manure like a raw material for the compost production. In big modern industry, horse manure is almost forgotten because of the lack of the horse manure. We collect horse manure from our neighborhood horse farms, which are on the 30 kilometers in our surrounding, because you cannot transport, like a small entrepreneur, any sort of such a voluminous material like horse manure, like straw, like whatever, on the longer distance than 30 kilometers. We collect those horse manure, we make a compost on very old traditional way. We are making the compost, it is the substrate, it is nutrition basement for the mush or champignon growing. Then we produce the mushroom. then that spent substrate is delivered like a soil amendment or organic fertilizer to our organic vegetable farmers, and we collect from them extra quantity of those vegetables, what they are producing also according to organic rules, and we create that dehydrated product, what you also can see on our website.
So I have seen a lot of things recently that say that we can use mushrooms to change the world. Do you think that's true?
I don't think that we can change the world. It is too strong word. It is true that fungi at all pretty underrated kingdom, and I think that mushroom can be useful, but I will not use such strong words that we can save the world. I think that we can save the world only if I act in synergy with inside and with everybody. You see, this COVID is exactly a perfect example of that.
So you actually started Ekofungi and all of this as a one-woman show. So could you take us back to when you were first starting out? What were you worrying about and struggling with the most in the very beginning?
Well, it was in fact funded by two girls. One changed career path and left. So I was never thinking that I am one or two women in the business. I simply believe and I trust that it is normal. And very honestly, I had now, after 25 years, when I take a look on the back, then I said, oh my God, how it must be that I was looking so funny to the people. But definitely in that moment, I just had idea. I told you I was a student in Wageningen University in mushroom experimentation and course. There, they have done applied science. And my ambition was that we create productional unit where also we will be the bridge between university and daily practice. Based on that, my ambition, I start my business. You need to know that was total abandoned piece of the field with very bad quality of soil. Otherwise, nobody would not give that soil to me, but it was totally. Only some woods and some trees and some plants had been totally like a small jungle was on that field. Without electricity, without water supplying, without any infrastructure. And I said, okay, because across of the road in front of that field was my lab where I was working before. I said, listen, I'm going to rent this piece of land and I'm going to start my mushroom production. Everybody was laughing, but honestly, I was never thinking about myself like a woman, like about woman in the business. I still believe that we, like a women, much more persistent, stronger. We have a much bigger energy for overbridging problems, for finding problem solution, so that's what I am thinking about the women in the business and about myself in the business, because I know that a lot of men will had given up already a million times on my place.
And it sounds like you did have a lot of obstacles to overcome and challenges to face. And I also saw that you said the existence of inner peace won't make the outside disruptors go away. But I was wondering how do you try to cultivate inner peace for yourself? And how does that help you when you have to face external structures or challenges?
Oh, it's not easy question. So first of all, I share my problems. Then I think that the social network, that is also point of my training curriculum for Ekofungi school. I'm insisting that the people learn how important it is to have a social network in surrounding, how it is important to have the people in surrounding, sometimes only for coffee, sometimes for help. And Michelle, about those things, those are normal things. But unfortunately, it is pity that now we start to talk about normal things like something very special. I think that just normal communication with the people can really save our lives. Also, to be in communication with the people, to be positive, to be open, to be brave, to be strong, for me was received to overbridge obstacles. And honestly, sometimes I'm a little bit tired of that, because here there is no normal. I mean, we are in permanent transition, and this region is in a permanent transition, which means that you permanently don't know what's coming next. And that is the point. That makes me sometimes really very, very, very tired. But okay, that's for sure normal.
It's a very important message, I think, particularly in these times. And
very
so
important.
In being open and bringing people together around this passion that you have, what's been the most important thing you've learned about leading both yourself and others towards a common goal?
You know, on the beginning of my career, my father told me, oh, great, now you are a biologist, now you are going to the primary school to teach children about to be a teacher. And I said, my goodness, I am everything but not a teacher. That's for me, absolutely not. So all of a sudden, after 25 years, I found in myself almost to be teacher. But that is a teacher out of the box. I think that being open and if you are doing your business, your job with the passion, like I think that you are doing as well, if you have a big pool of the knowledge, and I really have at least experience and knowledge, but experience in the first place, then you do not need to make a calculation what to say or not, how to approach or not. You are just happy that people trust you and travel. You know, we have people from Canada, from Taiwan, from Australia. Can you imagine? They are traveling half globe to come here in Ekofungi to teach. And for me, it is fantastic, already personal satisfaction. And for me, how we succeed by just be like what we are. I think that globally, people has to become more aware what they are at the end of the day, and stop to present themselves as a different person, as a bigger expert, try to be something what they are not. And I think that it is just be what you are, and that's all.
Yeah, I think that's a very important cry for more authenticity in our lives, and not always feeling we have to put different masks on in different settings. I think that's also particularly for younger people as they start their careers, if we can avoid that practice from the beginning and show up as our full selves, I think that we can make much stronger connections.
Michelle, I think that we have to start from the early childhood to bring the children message that they are the best if they are what they are. And I think that it is too late already when they come on university. I am absolutely sure that we need from kindergarten to teach the children that be open is the 90% of the happiness in life. Indeed.
Absolutely. Yeah. Liberating yourself from all of the boundaries you put up. Yeah, very nice. So I want to ask you, what is your favorite way to cook mushrooms?
There is many, but I will surprise you with a very ordinary response. The best way to cook mushroom is just fresh mushroom, put in white flour, then egg, then paneer meal, and then you put the salt inside of egg, and when you cover with that like steak Parisienne, place in the deep oil. It is not very healthy. It is not, but trust me, it is something what I really, really like.
Okay, that sounds great. I'm going to try that. It sounds like an oyster mushroom schnitzel or something.
Schnitzel, exactly.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Great Full Podcast. If you liked it, then please go ahead and subscribe and share it with a friend. And I would love to get your questions answered here. So if you have something that you would like me to explore on the show, go ahead, pull out your phone, open up the voice memo app, hit record,
and then email it to podcast@thegrateful.com. And I'll do my very best to get your questions answered here on the show. Music in this episode came from Blue Dot Sessions.